had on Saturday was definitely reasons for lower than you would thought end up being, and work.
Here we go.
I think that was curiosity to see how they were going to handle it. And Anderson returned such a big drop, and there was a little spike for Dennis Rodman that continued to go down. But this is maybe the only one, but maybe not. Rampage actually being collision by 27,000. Started and it almost half that the devil did fall down. So even find that but most of these coaches there's no viewership that fell away here. This quarter though must be it is the Dennis Rodman quarter where the viewership noticeably increased. And I've got my dashed lines here, as you can see. As the show wore on in the last two quarters, the total viewership fell below the normal trend of the demo viewership. To give you an idea of where this show usually is now. I've never seen that before. I haven't seen it. I've seen all three.
Last time, and you're fine.
It's our history. I can't think of a show that has
What's my one simple
descended. I think
Exactly.
this quarter, hour one, is a lot stronger, I think, because of the use of inspiring viewers to check out how this is going to be addressed. They got their answer in the first couple minutes. They could tune out after that if they wanted to. Plenty of other interesting stuff to watch, including Payback, college football, and baseball as well. Yeah, there were 3 college football games going on ABC, CBS, NBC, Major League Baseball on Fox. So I think all told, you had about 8.5 billion viewers for 4 games. But then Payback on top of it, which this was not SummerSlam. It was Payback. But I mean, I'm curious. Just it's probably as weak of a PLE as they're going to go. I don't think they're going to have I would think that Fastlane would be comparable to this. Survivor Series will be much bigger than this. And I mean, do you look at this as a combination of the fact that maybe the college football is going to be much more than even we envisioned it was going to be, or do you attribute this somewhat to just the combination of factors? But it is still a WWE event, and that is going to always be the toughest night of the month for Collision. Yeah, I think WWE makes this much worse than it would otherwise. They next week will tell us they'll be going against college football again. I expect it to be up, but I think the PLE definitely hurt it. They have UFC prelims as well this weekend because they have a card from Australia, so they will be going against that. And then the rest of the year, they have an NXT show September 30th. They'll go against the next main roster show is October the 7th, and then they avoid the Saudi Arabia card that you had reported will be November 4th, and then Survivor Series is end of November from Chicago, the Magic City. November 4th will be, the show will be earlier in the day. It'll be in the afternoon, yes, so we'll avoid that head-to-head. I want to say, the day that they did not go head-to-head with Money in the Bank, and Money in the Bank was earlier in the day, they still had a lower rating than the surrounding. That's right, that was the Tate Hamilton show, but you're right, it was still down that night. And so I wondered if, go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there's, even when it's not head-to-head with a WWE show, there is sort of that burnout if you are an audience member. I mentioned this on Sunday's show that, I looked at that all-out card, and it looked great on paper. But I definitely felt it on Sunday of just being up Saturday, watching a 3.5-hour wrestling show, and then coming back the next night knowing this is going to be a 4-hour show with a 1-hour pre-show that. And on top of that, you're asking for people to spend $50. Like there is that burnout for fans of how many nights am I going to dedicate to wrestling? How many hours of my weekend am I going to dedicate to wrestling? And for some, it's just going to be you're going to pick and choose. And on a weekend where you have multiple pay-per-view events, Collision is an easy miss there among your candidates. If you were going into this weekend stating I'm going to watch Payback and All Out, but I'm not tacking on another 2 hours on Saturday night. And no CM Punk on the Collision show.
CM Punk on the Collision show, perhaps ever again, doesn't help either. For a show that really has to avoid being Rampage in terms of becoming a less and less important show, it really has to rank highly, at least in some ways. At least not. Maybe it's gonna. I'm sure it's gonna be tougher in this fall season. And I do have from courtesy of at Sports TV ratings. I can show this. Robert Sedman has a Substack that's free. He's posting sports TV ratings every day, and we're looking at the Saturday, I believe now. No, we're looking at the Sunday. Anyway, it's even among just sports telecasts for Saturday. Collision ranks no better than like number 36. Now that includes broadcast, but this is certainly not a top 10 finish for Collision. There has to be some non-sports stuff in there too. I don't think we don't have that yet from Sport TV, but it's gonna be tough to keep this show strong. Tony did make it pretty clear that Bryan Danielson is going to be involved primarily in Collision moving forward. That suits his schedule better, but it's got to hold up.
How alarming of a number is this for you if you're AEW? I don't tend to overreact to 1 week.
It's 1 week, it's bad, but 1 week, I wouldn't freak out if it stays this way for weeks and weeks.
Yeah, I think obviously you look at this weekend, and I would think that they're not going to be this low this coming weekend without a WWE show. But no, there are the natural factors we're looking at. There is no CM Punk. There is college football. Like
Let's
you
see.
cannot just go into it. I think with just a pat hand at the same time. I feel like this is a show that you need to be monitoring and understanding that this is a show that is going to need that boost immediately, and the competition is going to intensify. But they've known that all summer, so this should not completely like the CM Punk stuff. You could not necessarily forecast, but the fall season you could.
Sure.
So on top of that, from the Collision numbers, is there anything else on the All Out front that you wanted to discuss?
How much of the press conference have you listened to?
Most of it. I saw everything except for Chris Statlander and most of the Adam Cole portion, but everything else I did see.
We got a Jacksonville Jaguars question in there. Did you catch that?
Oh, well.
He's being asked if the Jaguars are leaving Jacksonville. I thought
did he say yes? Did he break news that yes, we're
No.
leaving? We're leaving Jacksonville. Not breaking it at the All Out press conference.
He did start to talk about how great the Jaguars are, though. How great the team is.
Did you ask that?
No, I did not ask that. Not many questions about Punk here. I think only coming from Nick Hausman and me. I was really hoping that this is one of the biggest stories of the year. One of the biggest, the biggest star in AEW by a fair stretch, just got fired for cause. Pretty dramatic circumstances, and only a couple questions that dared to mention Singapore.
Were you surprised that there was no further information beyond? I mean, Tony was like, this was a very, it was a very strongly worded statement that they put out.
I'm taking my time while I'm going to the
United Center, and I was somewhat curious to see if it would be, if he would go into any level of detail, but it became pretty obvious from you and Nick's questions that this was a subject he was not going to address. I mean, Nick Hausman's follow-up was just ignored.
Yeah.
What he learned from the CM Punk situation. I mean, I think he was being the usual Tony Khan, very careful when it comes to these stories, which was a departure from what we saw the night before, where he was very detailed when it came to the level of what went into this decision.
Yeah, the press conference had an unusual dynamic in that Tony is always sitting next to the talent, which he was on this occasion, and media were asking questions, and often, rather than asking the talent a question, they asked Tony a question, which was unusual. But none of those questions, or most of those questions, were not about the Monk situation or anything like that. I don't know. I can't read anybody's mind, but it's almost like people wanted to ask the question, but weren't quite getting there. I had to have the sense, though, that if more people were willing to ask those questions, it would be easier to get momentum and more questions to be asked to maybe get more color, more detail on the story. I had a list of I was talking to you beforehand. I had a list of 10 questions ready to ask. You got like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, the top ones were what you asked about. What was the status of Jack Perry, and obviously, like, is there a no compete element to this firing with cause for Phil Brooks? Which, I mean, it
And he didn't answer it, and I didn't expect him to answer it. But there's other things. I felt that was, we're there to serve fan interests, audience interests, and what are they curious about? Um, and I think we have to at least ask it, even if it feels pretty likely that he's gonna not want to get into it.
You have to still ask. You still have to ask if you're not expecting an answer. It's like, okay, there's a 95% chance you don't get an answer, but there's a 100% chance you're not going to get it if you don't ask. That's kind of my thinking of it all. And
let's start from first.
We have seen, I mean, several reports have come out. I think Justin Barrasso at SI.com mentioning this, that from the Punk camp, sounds like there will be the time and day that CM Punk airs out his side of this, which will be the next chapter in the saga of where things go. And do they escalate? Is there a legal element to this, which I think would be a natural assumption that could be a result here, and I'm sure AEW is very mindful of that. At the same time,
I might go 25.
They had a very harshly worded description of this, to the point of Tony Khan stating that he felt his life was in danger from this incident that went down. So I think that rebuttal is going to happen, and we will see where this escalates into next. And I think if you are AEW, you want to move on as much as you can, but this is not, to me, a book that has closed yet.
Yeah, and one of the questions that I'd be curious to know, and I think you suggested, was that, is there a non-disparagement agreement here between the parties so that they can't say certain things about each other? I expect some sort of interview soon from Punk. I have searched Pacer for Phil Brooks and for All Elite Wrestling this morning. No news to report there. But I mean, just thinking about it, somebody suggested this to me, that wouldn't be surprising if he turned up on, let's say, Ariel Helwani's show, as just turn the screws to Tony, who's taking little shots back and forth between himself and Ariel. And Ariel has interviewed Punk before, so there seems to be a relationship there.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on the show many times throughout his UFC tenure. I can't get into his head. I don't know what his thought process is. You also have the precedent of the last time that he did an exit interview, so to speak, right? That led to a massive legal issue.
I would definitely want to speak with some lawyers before I interview CM Punk.
I think you'd be wise to
I like the fake shit.
Again, so much of this is like you can't get into his head and know what he's thinking based on precedent. He is somebody that I feel when he believes he has been wronged, rightly or you agree or disagree with him, like he wants his side out there, whether it be correctly or indirectly. So certainly would not be a surprise at all that suddenly some big statement interview drops from Bill Brooks. But in the short term, like that was always discussed. Like if you cut ties with this individual, it is going to cause
Beast Hunter.
Like in the short term, will this hurt Collision? Probably.
Fitness
but we're also going into a period where
ballistic
is going to be hurt regardless. So if you are seeing Punk, you can maybe have some solace in that fact that Collision is going to go down without you, and whether Phil Brooks deserves credit or not for his lack of participation on Collision and his numbers going down, I mean, that was almost inevitable. And from this point forward, you look at the options of what you have left, and is Tony Khan just looking to rebuild and build this up with a super deep roster, or are you looking for short-term fixes of going out there, bringing in someone that just takes everyone's attention away from CM Punk and puts it on someone else? And what the level of rope you have from WBD? Like, do they want to see increases immediately? Is this something where you're playing the long game, or do you need to be changing things around yesterday? I mean, that's part and parcel with working with a broadcaster and what their expectations are.
Yeah, it does feel like the beginning of a new era for AEW. I mean, how much do you think it matters that? I mean, I would argue since early 2022, since Cody left, which was sort of followed by the MJF controversy, him maybe walking out or whatever he did, and then the all-out press conference just after that. And think it's been a valid criticism for the last, whatever that is, year and 9 months, that the most interesting stories surrounding AEW were not on screen, were online and reporting. What is the drama of the day in AEW?
Personal
That is, they're able to now move past that, maybe, right? But probably. And does that make that is a healthy thing, I suppose, for AEW, for in terms of games, to produce programming that can be the main feature. Or obviously, Punk being out of the way is going to hurt them, at least in the short term. He's their biggest star, but does it matter that much that the biggest stories might actually be the things that are happening in the ring, rather than people wondering about what's happening backstage? Does that matter that much to the economics of their business?
I think from the optics, and again, there's going to be fans that disagree with the decision by Tony Khan to terminate CM Punk, but I think to a broad portion of the audience, at least optically, it feels like the connective issue in CM Punk from all these different stories is removed from the situation. Now, whether that do people have their head buried in the sand that this is all of a sudden going to be a locker room that is all in harmony with one another? I think that's a bit of a stretch to imagine any wrestling locker room that that's going to occur. But I think from a fan perspective, that there is the belief of this is the company officially moving on, because there has been this cloud over the company for minimum 1 year, and you could go back further, as you mentioned, this has been just this thing that has dragged on, and whenever there's been the thought that they're moving past it, something else inevitably pops up, and it's constantly taking attention away from what you're drawing money from. Like, this is not selling tickets, this is not selling pay-per-views, this was not putting any kind of positive, this was not drawing money in any way. It was attention that I think, to some people, any attention is great attention, but I think this would be an example of that not being the case. I don't think this enhanced AEW product in any way, and I think it diminished it.
And I think it's coincided with at least Tony's media approach of being more guarded, more evasive in press conferences and in interviews, because there's been questions that he doesn't want to address and get into, and I think that really started around early 2022 or so.
Let's go to one super chat here. We have a few. John Kleinchester. AEW pay-per-views go to Max. Would that benefit AEW financially against Feature Report and traditional pay-per-view, or is it more advantageous because of the built-in Max audience? Ultimately, we would have to know what the dollar figure is that they are getting for these pay-per-views. And it seems like for WWE, their move to Peacock, it was very advantageous for them, given the amount that they are now guaranteed. Similar to UFC, where there was a reason they eliminated the risk of having to create major attractions every single month to get people to buy a pay-per-view, when you have a guaranteed amount that no matter what your card is, you're going to get, and without knowing what the dollar figure is.
If you're AEW, you have to say, well, I need enough money to justify that, to justify this exact question, right? Maybe they can do 12 pay-per-views a year, and just like WWE does, but it has to be, they have to make the deal from WBD for that has to be well in excess of what they would make on traditional pay-per-view. What is that? That's, because I have this here, I think, all in, if it drew 165,000 pies, it generated around $4 million in pay-per-view revenue, just pay-per-view revenue. So that's on the high end, right? So I don't know. It's got to be maybe approaching at least $50 million, maybe $100 million, something like that. So if they can pay them enough, yeah. And I think there's a great value in having those events on streaming that we've seen. In the case of WWE being on Peacock, those events on Peacock, I think that's really coincided with the in 2021, I would say, turnaround or end of the attrition of fan interest. And I think it's, in large part because people were able to watch those pay-per-views to a degree that they didn't in the past, because Peacock was not something that they had to pay $9.99 for, but something that maybe came with a cable package, or they want to watch The Office or whatever it is, and so they had Peacock in their homes, and so they were just more engaged with the product, and maybe that led to downstream interest as well. And I think we saw early days of the W Network where you basically, doubled, something like that. You multiplied your pay-per-view audience, and that led to, I think, downstream engagement. We certainly saw an increase in ticket sales and merchandise sales from
Easy there,
2014,
Hi-Fi.
15, 16.
Probably just the endorphins kicking in when you passed out.
No formal New
Finna
Japan
see.
branding on wrestling.
I'm ready to get out in space and just take off and do what I want to do.
Got
That
what
are
you were
not
looking
booked
for.
on the Q and Hall show. So yes, New Japan has a Road to Destruction show the same day as this WrestleMania.
I need to know what that thing was that it had me touch.
Seattle. One of the major names not booked on that New Japan show is Will Ospreay. So Fury book him on that day on October the 1st. And the reasoning for this is that this is designed as a tribute show to Antonio Inoki on the anniversary of his death
Shoot,
last
I'm
year.
going in third
But
person.
you would think, unless New Japan is going to
A constellation contact?
remove talent that has already been advertised for that Q and Hall show, the New Japan talent will be
That's what I'm gonna do. I'm going in third person.
have access to. But maybe this relationship is enough that
You're just too
Ghetto
young
would
to know better.
yank some talent and be a good partner.
And that's a big travel period too, right? I'm trying to look at that. That's October 1st, right? That date is for.
Yes, a Sunday night.
But it's still there.
And they have
Same with
October 3rd is the next day on the tour, and then September 30th also Cork and all. So what I'm saying is to go to Japan, you're taking out more than just one, or to go to the U.S., you're taking out more than one day, even though it is on the West Coast in Seattle. Yeah, I almost wonder if they're just going to do Will Ospreay and Shibata and say, yeah, we've got some New Japan presence here.
I'd also wonder too of like how many of those New Japan performers would be like difference makers for a pay per view, and they would be your upper 5% of talent. That I mean, I don't think New Japan would want to take all of them out and you just fill this with whoever it is, your Okada, a Tanahashi, a Shingo Takagi, like that level. And beyond that, I mean, I don't think making sure you get a Hiroki Goto is going to be your big difference maker, as opposed to the roster that you have, plus an Ospreay, plus maybe one other big talent. I don't think this has to be a great number of performers
I'll put my helmet on.
from New Japan.
They do have matches announced. I'm looking at the October.
Yeah, they have the whole card listed, so it would require them to like take away from like what is advertised, which is very un-New Japan.
So Okada is in a 6-man. Naito is in that 6-man. Tanahashi is in a tag match. Just looking at the biggest names here. Yeah.
You guys like Toru Yano? Seattle.
I think Toru Yano
make that happen too. What do you think about just the idea of a Sunday night pay-per-view, and this is going against it's a big Sunday night game, I believe they are up against that night, if I'm not mistaken. It might even be the Bills playing.
Okay.
I don't know.
I put my helmet on. Okay.
A Sunday night
Okay,
pay-per-view.
I get it.
Football season, they have avoided Sunday nights, but this will be one where they do test the waters in the fall season.
Yeah, I mean,
and also coming so close, like maybe we shouldn't be too concerned about the proximity after seeing what All In that 4 weeks later.
Chiefs and Jets it's going against.
Okay, so that's a sizable game. Chris Dulla will.
Aaron Rodgers is moved to the Jets, and in Buffalo. We're not going to be able to watch it on ESPN.
Dude, everybody walk slow.
Charter Spectrum. Spectrum is serves cable for the Buffalo area, and I think a lot of New York, and I'm pretty sure most of the New York City area too.
This is almost 15 million cable subscribers that this carriage conflict is affecting. And based on my my podcast, you would think like a war is breaking out, because it is the only thing that is being discussed on every single show. This battle between Disney and Charter. But I mean, from a wrestling standpoint, I mean, it's unlikely, I would say, that this is resolved by Monday, which will affect people being able to watch Monday Night Football for most games this season.
Right. So then that's what is the first? Is the first Monday Night Football? It's not next month because yeah, so it is next Monday. Yeah, probably not. I would think it's still going to take Monday Night Football still across the rest of the country. What 15 million out of 70 million or so homes that's what the ESPN is in. So it's going to take some of the edge off, but it's still going to take a big hit on Raw, I would think. But the bigger economic consequences might be that John O'Rand has said they'll probably cable television, which could ultimately give all the networks less money, therefore less money they can spend on content, including the most expensive content, live sports rights, which encompasses WWE and AEW. So I don't know if that is that a setup for what Brandon Ross was talking about this week.
Brandon Ross, former guest of Politics Thurston, had this report on through Lightshed Partners and wrote that WWE and Endeavor investors have been laser focused on PFL in the past several days. The fear of Saudi money continues to weigh on the stocks. However, the event path for viewership refocused investors. In addition to the TKO deal closing in the next few weeks, we believe that WWE has been getting close to the goal line on deals for both Raw and SmackDown. Whenever you're getting the deep football analogies for business deals, that's
Almost in the end zone.
we have said that we believe Raw and NXT will return to NBC Universal. We suspect that the SmackDown negotiations are with Amazon or Disney, but we are less certain on the who in that deal. It is not Fox. I'm pretty definitive. The big question is whether the Charter-Disney dispute will interrupt these deals. As we wrote this morning, future of sports rights is now uncertain with the multi-channel bundle on the brink of collapse. Will traditional media companies be able to manage a more sudden transition to streaming? NBCU must be worried about its next deal with Charter, even as it could certainly simulcast on Peacock. If Disney is the frontrunner for SmackDown, could they even complete a deal? If it is Amazon, should they wait, given all sports rights could reprice? These are the questions most relevant to TKO's future at the moment.
And we still have the notion out there that, well, maybe none of this, at least the SmackDown part of this, is going to get done until the NBA rights are done. And then the networks know how much money they have to work with. They know the time slots that they still have available that they need to fill. And I don't know off the top of my head when the negotiating windows for NBA end, but it's going to be close to SmackDown. SmackDown's the Fox deal actually expiring, I would think, which is about a year from now, right? So the end of this month will be September, and it expires at the end of September 2024. So it could go that long, and by which time, maybe by even a week or two from now, the merger will be completed, and then Artie and Angle can get in there with Nick on and maybe make a deal. If it goes to Disney, then the prevailing wisdom is to be on FX SmackDown.
So a lot of wrestling fans will be worried about this carriage dispute. Where am I going to get my SmackDown?
Well, that'll be a year from now. I'm sure that'll be settled by then.
This will be
or Prime Video. I still think it's early to go to Prime Video to put one of your flagship shows strictly on streaming, unless there's some sort of deal that can be worked out so that there's a simulcast, at least for the early part of any deal like that. Let's say it's a 5-year deal. I would be real hesitant if I'm WWE to put SmackDown on a platform that's not going to reach. I don't know. Now I say reach, but Prime Video is in like 80 million homes or something like that because people actually subscribe to Prime Video Prime for all sorts of reasons. They may or may not actually use the Prime Video service. You look at what the NFL did when Thursday Night Football went exclusive to Prime Video, and it's doing in the tens of millions of viewers, but it's a drop off from what it was doing when it was on Fox, right? So it's going to do lower viewership. You're going to end up with SmackDown that's currently doing 2.5 million viewers sometimes is going to fall to, I don't know what, fall in half maybe. And think of the downstream effects that might have.
I'm gonna fight, bitch.
It feels early, unless the money is going to be enormous, and or unless there's some sort of partnership that can be made with the traditional TV network. And Amazon doesn't own any of them, obviously. So it would have to be with somebody who may be viewed as a competitor, which makes it seem less likely to be.
The other part of that story was regarding the investment with a Saudi Arabian group that has now acquired a reported 10% stake in the Professional Fighters League. And I did not expect this to be the kind of impact on the WWE stock. But that was certainly the thinking last week. Like, we saw this WWE stock take a major hit, and while it's recovered somewhat, it is not fully recovered. It's trading at about $100 now, and I think traded as low as around 95-ish last week. And this was, at a period it was trading at around $115. So it has seen some extreme volatility over the last week. And that was the prime factor, was this investment and the idea of WWE being tied with the UFC through this soon-to-be finalized merger, and that this Saudi Arabian investment would signal kind of their entry point into mixed martial arts and disrupting the UFC's business. That obviously is Wall Street was concerned enough about how this impacts WWE.
Yeah. So PFL, it airs on ESPN, right? Is this is an extra $100 million to the PFL? Does that make it a big competitor now for UFC? Is this a reasonable reaction to the stock price?
I don't think it was a reasonable reaction. I thought this was actually a pretty great overreaction. As we've discussed on the show, I think the involvement of the progression of the antitrust suit to me is way more alarming. Like they have now set a trial date for next April, which I mean, still there is the appeal process that UFC is going through the Ninth Circuit Court over. But there's a potential trial, and that could greatly disrupt UFC's business, and not to mention the treble damages that they could be facing, which goes into the multi billions if they're found guilty.
And I read a quote from Dana White the other day where he called these other MMA organizations charity organizations. So
Yes. Yeah. So you have one side arguing that there's plenty of competition in the MMA space. UFC is just one of many, and then Dana White is just saying the complete opposite. So there you have Exhibit A, Dana White. But I mean, the PFL, like they've been around for a number of years, and it's not as though they have not been um, enticing when it comes to like the way they are structured. It's through these tournament formats where if you go through their regular season and playoffs, and this accounts to about 4 fights per year, and you win, there's $1 million prize at the end, which is sizable money for mixed martial arts. And it's not as though we have seen this giant flow of even mid-level fighters. Like PFL have signed some ex-UFC fighters, but it's not been substantial. It's not like they've interrupted UFC's market cap in any significant way. They tried one pay-per-view last year and it bombed. And they certainly have much more capital now, so it's not nothing. But to me, it's unproven, and I would say like this level of reaction, I just thought was a way reaction in terms of what this means. And PFL is so much further behind than the comparable of an AEW to a WWE. I mean, PFL could not dream of doing 100,000 buys on pay per view. Not at this juncture.
now on Friday, Front Office Sports reported that there's a possible merger being discussed between Bellator and PFL. I have it here. So Bellator is owned by Paramount, which is the organization that owns CBS and former Viacom networks. They reported that the Professional Fighters League is in talks to purchase competitor Bellator MMA from Paramount. Two sources with knowledge of the discussions told Front Office Sports. Bellator is valued at as much as $500 million in the deal, which I think this is what motivated the Dana White comment to say that this is ridiculous, that it's worth $500 million. The transaction would be primarily in cash, with Paramount receiving some equity in PFL. So, if those two companies were to combine, does that then present a real competitor to UFC that justifies the action that we're seeing in the stock?
To me, the value of Bellator is like they have some excellent fighters on their roster, but in terms of just buying the company, and if that is like a rumored valuation of Bellator, that seems awfully high to me of what Bellator is. Again, like Bellator is on Showtime. Their viewership has dropped dramatically since leaving what was Spike TV years ago.
Paramount Network, yeah,
and the Paramount Network. So they're on Showtime. They have not been able to, become a pay-per-view entity. But they have some great fighters on their roster, and that's where the value is. But I look at this, and I still see this as it's a well-funded competitor to the UFC. But I think it's like there's just such a gulf between this and the UFC that the perfect example of this was a few weeks ago, and this was when like Francis Ngannou has both a deal to fight Tyson Fury this year, and he's also got a PFL contract to do an MMA fight and plans to do that next year. And part of his negotiation with PFL was that his opponent, whoever they sign, which in theory, would be their next foray into pay-per-view. His opponent would be paid at least $2 million. And Derek Lewis, who's a very popular UFC heavyweight, his deal was up with the UFC. And everyone looked at this like, this guy's timing is perfect. He could be the ideal candidate to score a giant payday with PFL. And he just quietly resigned with the UFC for an 8-fight deal. And he's back with the UFC. So it's like the idea of even having this giant purse at the end of things to go to PFL, it's not just a given that these fighters want to leave the UFC and still look at it as the best path for their career, even if it is less paying. And I just feel like there is so much built in among, like, the UFC is just so embedded for many of these fighters of, like, this is the major leagues of the
We all flying. Yo, what up?
UFC.
What up, Al? You see me, man? I'm out here flying, bro.
Their pay structure. And the thing that
I'm
threatens
flying, bro.
it's not money from Saudi Arabia. It is this antitrust case that might force them to have to change contract language and the level of restrictions that they have. So I would just be paying a lot more attention to the antitrust suit than the PFL, which to me is
we saw no negative reaction to Endeavor or WWE when the antitrust suit news came out.
no. And maybe that changes when like a trial date starts looming, and there's also going to be another discovery period later this fall where probably a lot more is going to come out. But yeah, thus far the antitrust suit has had no impact on Endeavor stock or WWE's for that.
I'm always mystified what really moves the stock. I wonder if it's I mean I imagine what moves the stock are actions from financial institutions and reports from equity analysts who I think know what they're doing. But then you see stuff like this where, like, I wonder if they just, see PIF and say, wow, Saudi money, they understand what that means, and that causes a reaction.
I think that's it, right? This one totally caught me off guard, like, completely. And I think it's just that. Like, you can look on paper, and I can see how they draw this conclusion. But to me, it's not been borne out with reality of, like, there's so much more. Like, 2 years from now, maybe I'm proven incorrect, but I just don't see it right now that PFL is suddenly this giant player in this industry that's going to eat into the UFC's dominance over the market. The antitrust suit, I can very much see that being a major impact on the UFC's business and conversely WWE's as well because of the implications of that. And amazingly, with the antitrust suit at the level it's at, and so many parallels to WWE, that has appeared not any kind of factor when it comes to approving of this merger. That looks like it has just gone through a very easy process, and it's largely rubber stamped, and everyone expects a approval any week.
Yeah. So W might be a deal here at $100 a share.
Okay.
Might
the boy flying.
A few other news and notes that we wanted to get into here. Cardiff, Wales. What was the going rate for Clash at the Castle last September? How much did it cost for a foreign country to land a WWE premium live event? And probably insight into what WWE would want for an event in London. Probably a lot more for a WrestleMania.
Yeah, so this is like old news that nobody noticed until about a week ago. Because in April, way back in April, the Welsh government put out a press release that said, I have the quote here, W's Clash at the Castle events in Cardiff in 2022 delivered a massive 10-to-1 return on investment by channeling 21.8 million pounds back into the Welsh economy. So you do the math there.
Hey, I'm good at this. I'm good at this.
They're putting math out here. 10-to-1 return on 21.8 million pounds. So just divide that by 10, and you get 2.18 million pounds, which in U.S. dollars is 2.8 million U.S. dollars. So that's looks like something. I'm sure there's, this is not specifically correct, and maybe they're just sort of rounding to get to a 10-to-1 ratio, but it gives you an idea of where it was at. It's around $3 million US, around 2 million pounds, which sounds right. You know that Puerto Rican local government paid $1.5 million in cash for Backlash. I suppose for SmackDown 2 the night before, in addition to a $300 in-kind value related to the venue that they ran. So that's close. That's less than $3 million, and this was a stadium event, Clash of the Castle versus an arena event for Backlash. Um, I'm sure WrestleMania has been a bidding situation for years and years. I don't know any numbers for what municipalities have paid for WrestleMania. Um, you know, Backlash. I don't know what San Antonio paid. They apparently provided some sort of value to WWE for the Royal Rumble. That was the detail that they were allowed to withhold when they brought they made a request to the state attorney general, and they were approved, and so they didn't have to release that information because they view it as competitive, and it would allow other municipalities to be able to put in smarter bids, I guess, and could disadvantage San Antonio from getting a bid, getting a winning bid on a WWE event in the future. So, 2.2 million pounds, and I think there's questions around like what did that give enough value to the local economy? They're justifying that it did. Look, we got a 10x increase, 10x return on our value there. And I went back and looked at the pay per view itself on Peacock, and you did get, just like you did for Backlash, you did get 2 tourism ads, I guess, and one of which was ended with Michael Cole and Byron Saxton and Corey Graves just glowing about what a great time they've been having in Cardiff.
You don't think they did have a long time in Cardiff?
Well, they may well have. I mean, they probably don't say that though if they're not getting paid lots of money for it.
And of those 2.2 million pounds, that comes with a press conference as well.
There was a press conference after Clash of the Castle, yes, as well as Backlash. International PLEs, I was told, will likely get a press conference as well as the Big Five: WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and Money in the Bank.
So our next one would be Chicago, unless they do one in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, that's how we do it. Hey, though, I can fight.
I mean, they don't do a rally. They don't do a Q&A, yeah.
All right, a few more super chats have come in. Oh, how much do you see the AEW media rights deal will wind up that thing? Can you just
give us a number?
Chase Brandon, how much are they going to get?
How much is it?
Rights deal.
I speculated anywhere between 3x and 5x will be average annual value of the current deal. The current deal is worth, let's make math easy. The current deal is worth about $45 million. You know, it's more though now because of Collision. So now I believe it's about 70, right, with Collision. So you're providing an extra 2 hours of content.
Okay.
So times 3 would be 121. No, let's 7 times 3 again. 210. It'd be 210. Somewhere between 210 and $350 million average annual value. I think it's fair to be a little bit more bearish without CM Punk there, because that's, you take away the biggest star, it's going to have an effect on ratings. So maybe on of that range. That's right. David Zaslav's favorite wrestler.
Now, Zaslav will find
Mr. Zaslav, excuse me.
Mr. Zaslav, his new favorite will be $1 bill, big bill.
Maybe, yeah.
Next up is from Lee. Sammy, I assume he means Guevara, unless there is another Guerrero that has made its way onto the AEW roster. He has had backstage fights with Andrade and Eddie. Thunder Rosa says she was bullied by the girls. Does AEW have a wider problem than Punk? Well, that's listen, for the Punk situation, this man was not let go because of one incident with Jack Perry. It was, they deemed they went into an investigation about all of the CM Punk era in AEW and felt at the end of it, this is our unanimous view on him. And I would say that if they made that conclusion regarding CM Punk and a pattern that they were able to put together, I don't believe anyone else would be held to a higher standard than CM Punk. And that would include a Sammy Guevara, that would include anybody on the roster. So if you're trying to say like there's some double standard here, the double standard would have been finding a way to keep CM Punk by any measure on your roster, and they ultimately cut ties with him. So that would be my thought on the matter. Do you have any thoughts beyond that?
I mean, I think a lot of it does come down to leadership. It's true that there have been other fights and conflicts that have involved other people, besides the unknown. I think some of that is down to the leadership and their ability to do things that deter those things from happening.
Our next question, if SmackDown goes to FX, Disney Plus should be the live simulcast partner, similar to Dancing with the Stars on ABC and Disney Plus. I would see like ESPN Plus maybe.
Yeah. ESPN Plus, maybe, I don't know if Hulu wants to do live programming. I know they're doing a virtual MVPD with all the channels you can get there. Yeah, ESPN Plus makes the most sense, I suppose. Especially you probably want that to be a player in the PLE and library rights in the next round, too.
Brace for wrestling fans. A big fear.
You gotta remember, the Disney brand is super family friendly, and they want to keep anything that's, got inherent violence, like WWE, away from that, I would think.
And the last super chat from Jake Allenar. What's next? The ongoing MLW WWE. Awesome. My understanding is like they're into like a discovery period at the moment, and it remains to be seen like what is the next what's the next action that comes out of this. But when you're into discovery, there certainly could be some very interesting.
Yeah. I think they're into discovery, which I think involves making lots of requests to each other. We did see that one filing where Live Nation, which is the parent company of Ticketmaster, was objecting to having to cooperate with the subpoena because MLW, in their view, MLW wanted information that was too broad. That happened around August 7th. I tweeted about it. There is a schedule published. Let's see here. They have is there anything that soon? Next year, June 17th, 2024, they have a joint trial setting conference statement. I don't know any other deadlines, but yeah, discovery is ongoing, and I assume there'll be more filings over the months too that might make reference and might use what they find in discovery as exhibits in other arguments.
And reveal them on their next Fight Plus special.
I guess look at my bio if they do that.
Bring out all of this information in a nice orderly fashion. Before we wrap things up, Brandon, are there any other things that you wanted to hit on before we call it a day?
I don't think so. I think that accomplishes everything on the list that I sent you this morning.
Yeah, Brandon and I sent him a list of topics, and then later I had seen that he had already sent me a detailed list of topics, and there was a lot of crossover. I think we're very much in simpatico.
Virtually the same. I guess we could really quickly. New Japan, we know how much money New Japan generated in terms of revenue for the fiscal year of the recently ended fiscal year. The 12 months ending June 2023, they made $36 million in revenue. New Japan did, according to Bushiroad's filings. They made a slim profit of operating income of $1.6 million. Now, they reported in the past net income, so net income is after taxes and depreciation, amortization, all that stuff. So they might have actually not made money on Japan this year. I don't know, but revenue has recovered somewhat, right? It's not at the peak level in 2019 where they made $7 million, but it's pretty close. Stardom, I don't have the numbers here, but Stardom, while it made a fraction of that revenue, which is under Bushiroad also, was actually more profitable than New Japan was in the same period. So interesting there. That Stardom's doing well enough to be quite profitable.
It also tells you how, when you look at the pandemic period for the columns there ending in July of 2020, how running 2 nights at Wrestle Kingdom likely got them through, because they were running no shows during the pandemic. They were still able to squeeze out a profit for those first 6 months, for the fiscal year, but that including the first couple of months of the pandemic. And then the following year, which would represent all pandemic, they made nothing, but they also lost nothing.
And so Stardom is under a segment called Bushiroad Fight, which people who I trust to know these things better than I do say that it's maybe not entirely Stardom, but it's probably mostly Stardom. There's not that much else in that segment. So Bushiroad Fight segment recorded $10.5 million in revenue that year and $1.72 million in operating income. So just a hair above Japan operating income. And $10.5 million. So you think about that in like U.S. wrestling terms, that's like, that's a fifth of a Saudi Arabia event for WWE. Just to give you an idea how much bigger the the major U.S. wrestling companies, especially WER, than this one.
Leech.
Yeah, you know, in a couple months, I guess you could say, maybe less than that, in a month, right? WWE makes more money than New Japan does all year.
So there you have it. That Saudi Arabian money coming for pro wrestling. Maybe they're going to find their next competitor for WWE that they will get involved with at the ground level, and then cause the stock to just nosedive once again.
Yeah, I mean, I've joked about this in the past, but like for the money that the PIF is spending on WWE events, it really could have. I mean, it's probably similar to what the Khan family is invested in AEW.
I would certainly look at the fact that they were reportedly a player when it came to attempting to buy WWE. And do they just view this as like, this is the brand, this is the Kleenex of professional wrestling, versus a desire to have ownership of a pro wrestling company? Because yes, you would certainly have to find the talent and infrastructure to do so, but the startup cost would not be the hindrance that it would be for so many other people, such as.
The one thing is that they did live golf from scratch.
Yeah.
But they definitely do want to be associated with this, this legacy American entertainment brand
that's already embedded into the culture. I think that's a huge part about being involved with WWE for them. There you go. A fun format today. Thank you to everybody for the super chats. We got through a lot of topics. Next week we will be back, guest pending, so look out for that with our updates. We are working on several guests over this week, so we will keep you appraised of all of that. Brandon will be back this coming Sunday with WrestleNomics Radio. Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. Patreon.com/WrestleNomics. You can go catch their one free show of the month from this past week, live from the airport, as Brandon literally boarding his flight as he is rounding up charts. And
I almost didn't make it. I like pulled out the app on my phone to get on the flight, and I was like, why can't I get the QR code to load? And I'm talking to the guy at the gate, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? He's like, oh, you didn't pre-check in, so we figured you weren't going to come on the flight, so we scratched you off. You got to go talk to her. But they were helpful and got me on the plane.
All out of luck. But he did make the plane, and he brought you a free show this past Sunday. But you're back this weekend, and you can check out all of that at patreon.com/WrestleNomics. Do you think CM Punk will still be a big topic by Sunday?
Less so, but I'm sure he'll rekindle his presence.
The main character in professional wrestling, without a doubt. We are back, myself and Wei Ting, tonight, 10 Eastern. We'll be here on the Post YouTube channel with Rewinded Dynamite after tonight's show from Indianapolis, Indiana. So we'll be going through that. And if you are so interested, on Thursday at postwrestlingcafe.com, Wei and I are doing a review of UFC 200 from July of 2016. Brock Lesnar's one-night return to the UFC, where everyone thought he had turned back the clock. And then after a pair of pre-fight drug test results came in, it was not as happy of a comeback for Brock Lesnar. But coming out of that, we learned that part-timers in WWE not subject to the bonus policy. So we will go into all of our UFC 200 coverage, which Wei and I covered in Las Vegas that week. So we will recount our time in the scorching Las Vegas heat, where it was one of the crazier fight weeks with John Jones being pulled from the card, Brock Lesnar. It's a wild week. 3 straight nights of UFC.
I emailed the New York State Athletic Commission and asked them, hey, look, he just, tested positive, whatever, Brady failed a drug test that he was like a footprint or something was his reasoning. But, this happened in Las Vegas. Are you in New York, where he's going to wrestle in Brooklyn for SummerSlam? Are you going to acknowledge this suspension? And they were like, long story short, it's up to, I think they said it's up to WWE.
Yeah, it's in New York. The promoters have to be licensed, but it is a commissioned state, and as we saw with GCW last year, they can be very vigorous when it comes to licensing professional wrestling events. But I'm going to give Brock Lesnar.
That's how you do that.
They were okay with letting it play out, but we'll talk about that more. So thanks to everyone for joining us. That is going to wrap up Pollock and Thurston.
Don't follow me into no bathroom. Yeah, you gotta do better than that, buddy. I'll take your credit though. Put your monkey on. Okay. I can go
I'm detecting a safe nearby. We could make use of whatever is inside, provided you had some digging to do.
close with it. Energy higher, thermal, corrosive higher. Same. I like that. I'm going there.
You gotta be kidding me. The Frontier has a new captain? You working with Barrett, or did you pry the ship keys out of his cold, dead hands? We don't have a problem with Barrett. We want that ship, the Frontier. If you're the captain of it now, that means we're after you. Oh, no. You see, maybe your colleague Barrett didn't tell you, but there's a bit of a legend surrounding that ship. That constellation keeps treasure hidden in the cargo bays, the loot from 100 planets, and it's going to be ours.
That statement is partially correct. The Frontier has been to many planets and moons, but the only things held in the cargo bays are spare parts, dust, desiccated food particles, and a variety of species of ant.
I don't care what kind of lies Barrett programmed that robot to say. We're taking that ship.
If he were here, Barrett would say he was proud of you for asking that.
The answer is no. Open fire!
Captain Freeman, Protocol Indigo dictates that I am to return to the lodge with no
No, killed them. I'll carry him too.
Your spinal health will be compromised by carrying so many items. Captain Freeman. To reach the launch, we must jump to the planet Jemison in the Alpha Centauri system, and then land in the city of New Atlantis. And don't worry, this will all become second nature before too long.
Here's the okay. That's research.
Starship Frontier, this is United Colony Security. Maintain course and prepare to be scanned. Scan complete. No contraband detected. You are cleared for landing at New Atlantis.
Okay. We got them. Think it's a perfect place to save.
to walk at full speed with your pack that full. Your memory is uncanny.
And here's your new captain. My crew can take a look at your ship, and you can stop by the Trade Authority kiosk if you need to offload some cargo. The Trade Authority runs a vending kiosk next to my booth. It's just off to the side, near the ramp. Besides that, Jemison Mercantile is your closest shop if you're looking for a bit of everything. That's further in, past the security checkpoint. Everything looks good here. I'll be at my booth if you need me.
Well, you'll get less. Okay. Make sure I get to the place that I need to be.
What's up, my comic comrades? With Mortal Kombat 1 almost upon us, we thought it would be fun to talk about the history or evolution, if you will, of the Mortal Kombat franchise as a whole. Mortal Kombat at its core is a game franchise, but over its 3 decades of existence has become so successful it spawned into several movies, shows, cartoons, and more. So today we're going to talk about all of it, running down the evolution of the greatest fighting game franchise of all time. I'm looking at you, Street Fighter. You ain't touching MK. Alright, so Mortal Kombat was created by Ed Boon and John Tobias and first released on October 8th of 1992. The game was released on Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Amiga for PC, and of course, arcade cabinets. God, I miss arcades. I mean, you can still find them, but they're not nearly as commonplace as they were in the 90s. Many of Friday and Saturday nights were spent at arcades. My dad would take me. It was fantastic. Anyway, let's start by talking about the story or plot for Mortal Kombat, which has only been expanded upon with every game to follow the original release. The story of the game takes place on Earthrealm, where a legendary tournament is being held by Shang Tsung on a remote island. 7 of its locations act as steps in the game. We learn that the sorcerer Shang Tsung was banished from Earthrealm 500 years ago, but with enlisting the help of the humanoid dragon Goro, Shang is able to take control of the Mortal Kombat tournament, and in doing so, attempts to take over the realm. The crazy part is, for the last 500 years, Goro has won every tournament, giving him 9 wins in a row. And if Goro can pull off a 10th consecutive win, Shao Kahn, Shang Tsung's boss, so to speak, and Emperor of Outworld, would be able to take Earthrealm for himself according to the rules of Mortal Kombat. In order to stop this from happening, 3 of Earth's greatest warriors, Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Sonya Blade, must enter the tournament and win saving Earth. They are guided along the way by Raiden, the Thunder God, who possesses control over lightning. The funny thing is, most of the backstory wasn't even given to us in the first Mortal Kombat game, but rather in its coinciding 1992 Mortal Kombat comic published by Midway and written by MK co-creator John Tobias. That's right, even for Mortal Kombat, comics were the best way to lay down the backstory. And since we're first and foremost a comic book based channel, let's talk for a second about all the Mortal Kombat comic books over the years. First, you have the Mortal Kombat one-shot I just mentioned, simply titled Mortal Kombat from 1992, published by Midway, and that gave us much of the backstory for the Mortal Kombat universe. This comic is awesome and it has nostalgia written all over it, especially if you owned it as a kid in the 90s. The art, I think, is fantastic, and again, it details the origins of Mortal Kombat, showing us the 3 Earth warriors that were chosen to defend Earth's realm. You got Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Sonya Blade. The comic even gives us the introduction of Scorpion and Sub-Zero's rivalry, probably the greatest rivalry in all of the franchise, from 2 of the most popular characters of the franchise. Man, those original ninja outfits that were just color swaps between all the ninjas were dope. I dig all the new, more personalized designs for Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Reptile, and so on, but there's something to be said about the simplicity of just changing the color for all of them. I don't know, maybe it's just nostalgia, but I love seeing them in their classic ninja outfits. Anyway, the comic plays out much like the first live-action Mortal Kombat.
You're all on a carnival cruise, 7 players, frozen by the fickle hand of fate. Would you call it a night as strangers?
That movie from 1995, and that's mainly because they pulled from this comic book, and if you know
Okay.
anything about me, I'm all about respecting the source material. And that's what they did, which is one of the main reasons the first Mortal Kombat movie is still the best Mortal Kombat live-action movie, hands down. Anyway, from here we would get another Mortal Kombat book in 1993 in the form of Mortal Kombat 2 Collector's Edition, which, as you may have guessed, ties into the Mortal Kombat 2 game. This book is responsible for giving us the comic first appearance of Shao Kahn, Jax, Kintaro, Reptile, Baraka, Melina, and more. It's another comic that I highly recommend you guys read that has nostalgia written all over it, at least for me. Then in 1994, they released the Mortal Kombat 7-issue miniseries through Malibu Comics. We also got the Mortal Kombat Goro Prince of Pain 3-issue series, which is a story focusing all around Goro being transported to Earth by a mysterious sorcerer named Zagat, who basically looks like a Gandalf Joker hybrid. And then there's also the Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition, also published by Malibu. MK over the years would go on to have several comic book titles, including the more recent Mortal Kombat X series that lasted 12 issues and was published by DC Comics. The comic follows the rebooted timeline that took place at the end of Mortal Kombat 9, with DC set in motion in Mortal Kombat X and 11, but more on the rebooted timeline later. Now it's time to get into the actual games. Okay, so there has been a total of 26 main, spin-off, and complete edition games for Mortal Kombat over its 3 decades of existence. That is what we like to call a butt ton, ladies and gentlemen, and guess what? I'm gonna name every single freaking one of them. You have Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero,
Sub-Zero, Mortal Kombat 4, Mortal Kombat Gold, Mortal Kombat Special Forces, Mortal Kombat Advance, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition, Mortal Kombat Deception, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, Mortal Kombat Armageddon, Mortal Kombat Unchained, Ultimate Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, one of my favorites for obvious reasons, Mortal Kombat from 2011, aka Mortal Kombat 9, Mortal Kombat Completion Edition, Mortal Kombat X, Mortal Kombat Mobile, Mortal Kombat XL, Mortal Kombat 11, Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath, and Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate. And then there's the yet-to-be-released Mortal Kombat 1, which will be the 27th installment in the game franchise. We actually got an early copy of MK1, and we're going to be giving you our thoughts on it in an upcoming History of Liu Kang episode. But needless to say, we are not going to be breaking down every single game because that would be a very long video. But we will break down what you need to know going into Mortal Kombat 1. So it all basically starts in the 2006 Mortal Kombat Armageddon game. The super simplified version of what's going on in the storyline of this game is by this time in the Mortal Kombat universe, the combatants of the realms were getting too strong and big for the realms to handle. Because of this, the warriors' powers threatened to destroy the very fabric of the Mortal Kombat universe. In short, this would all lead to Armageddon for the realms. Anyway, in the continuity or canon ending of the game, Shao Kahn defeated Blaze, a fire spawn who was created by the Elder Gods to kill as many fighters as it could, in order to save the realms from its impending Armageddon. With Blaze out of the picture, Raiden was the last remaining hope, at which point he uses a shattered amulet to send his past self a cryptic message in order to prevent Armageddon before Shao Kahn kills him with his newly reacquired godlike power. This brings us all the way to Mortal Kombat 9 from 2011, where Raiden uses the knowledge he acquired from his future self to reboot the timeline, taking the story back to the original MK trilogy. This timeline change would give us a whole new era for Mortal Kombat with the next two releases, Mortal Kombat X and MK11. And now more currently, in the upcoming MK1 game, Liu Kang, who is essentially a god now after the events of MK11, is going to be resetting the timeline yet again, giving us a brand new start for the Mortal Kombat game franchise. The game looks awesome, so I'm totally down to see where this is all headed, as the trailers tell us you could choose different paths. Characters like Sub-Zero and Scorpion could be brothers or enemies, so I'm very curious to see how that all plays out. The MK games will always be the heart and soul of the franchise, as that's the core and where it all started. But because of the brilliance of the game, it's been made into movies, TV shows, and more, so let's talk about that. First and foremost, we have what I still think is the best live-action Mortal Kombat movie, hands down, and that is the first Mortal Kombat live-action movie from 1995. I must have watched this movie every single day for a month straight when it was released on VHS. Not only that, my dad took me to see this opening weekend, which is a core memory. I was 8 years old, I pretty much played all the games, had trading cards, a bunch of the action figures, and I got to see the movie live action on the big screen. Man, it's the 90s. Sure, the movie by today's standards isn't the best, so call it nostalgia, whatever you want, but I love it still. I think it's the best MK movie to date. I'll die on that hill. I mean, the theme song alone is iconic. That song was played everywhere, on the radio, clubs. You couldn't get away from the epic Mortal Kombat theme song this movie gave us. Anyway, next up we have Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Now, this movie is widely considered to be a train wreck, as it was a massive downgrade from the first film. The budget clearly wasn't as big. Several of the actors didn't return to reprise their roles, but hey, I still liked it, which is clearly because of childhood memories, but I don't know what to tell you. But it did give us Shao Kahn, who was teased at the end of the first film, also an updated Scorpion costume, the second Sub-Zero, and the introduction of Rain, Ermac, Shiva, Baraka, and more. So yes, the movie is pretty terrible, but I have fond memories of it. Then we have the 2021 Mortal Kombat film, which I wasn't really a fan of at all. I'm actually kind of shocked it's getting a sequel, considering most people weren't a fan of this film either, especially us Mortal Kombat fans, but hopefully they get it right the second time around. Now, even though that's the end for live-action Mortal Kombat movies as of now, that is not the end for live-action Mortal Kombat, not one bit. Because in 98, we got a live-action Mortal Kombat television series called Mortal Kombat Conquest, which got one season and ran for a total of 22 episodes. Yet again, as a kid, I loved this series. I was never able to watch all of it because back then it was a lot harder to catch TV shows and find out what time, channel, and day they aired. But I did watch a good chunk of it, specifically all the episodes I'd catch with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. It served as a prequel for the first Mortal Kombat film, which is why costumes for characters like Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Reptile, and so on are ripped right out of the first film. Nonetheless, this series has a cult following for us MK fans, and I'm part of it. But that's not it, because Mortal Kombat also got Mortal Kombat Legacy in 2011. And Rand, recordings just got better.
Hey, it's Dana
You
from
found a
StreamYard.
decade
So
ago
excited
by
to
a man
announce
named
that
For
Sebastian
2
Kurz.
seasons with a total of
He wanted to
19
start
episodes, it
making
originally served as an online web series. The series was originally meant to be a rebooted movie with a more grounded take on the Mortal Kombat universe, but Warner Brothers, a new line, declined, and instead greenlighted it for a web series. It was actually pretty well received, and I know I personally dug it. Next, we have a tie-in and or prequel to the first Mortal Kombat film, which I feel is highly underrated, and that is Mortal Kombat The Journey Begins, straight to home video movie. This served as an unofficial prequel to the first MK film, releasing the same year. I must have watched this thing, I don't even know how many times, like all the time. The video featured traditional 2D animation and CG Pixar-style animation, which is horrible by today's standards, so that Scorpion and Sub-Zero CG fight, I would rewind and watch over and over. And the film was only 54 minutes long and included a 15-minute behind-the-scenes documentary of the live-action film. This release was so good and has some of my favorite Mortal Kombat memories tied to it. But it doesn't end there. No, it does not, because when 1996 rolled around, we got the Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm animated series. This series was awesome, and I would watch it all the time on the USA Network. However, it was very short-lived, only getting 1 season and a total of 13 episodes. One of the cool things about the series was we got to see a bunch of good guys in the MK universe, hence the series being called Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm. In any case, the Defenders consisted of Liu Kang, Curtis Stryker, Sonya Blade, Jax, Katana, Sub-Zero, the good one, and Nightwolf. And lastly, we have the Mortal Kombat Legends animated movies that started back in 2020. The first was Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge, which was awesome. Then this led into Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms, which then would give us Mortal Kombat Legends Snowline, all of which I highly recommend you watch. But with all that said, now we wait for the new Mortal Kombat game, which will reboot the game franchise, as well as waiting for the sequel to the 2021 Mortal Kombat film. Needless to say, we are not going to have any shortage of Mortal Kombat in years to come, and I couldn't be more happy about that. Because again, it's the greatest fighting game of all time. The Injustice games are pretty close, but that's because it's basically just Mortal Kombat with DC characters. In fact, the Injustice games are made by the same game studio, NetherRealm, that makes the MK games, so no shock there. That wraps up our evolution and or history of Mortal Kombat. It's been a blast to go over all the awesome Mortal Kombat games, movies, and so on that the franchise has put out over the years. It's also exciting to see where this new game will take things. And now it is over to you. What is your favorite Mortal Kombat game, movie, or show? Let us know down in the comments. Other than that, we'll see you next time when I talk about all things comics.
Watch college football all season long. Live. It's cable free.
You mean
It's
besides
YouTube
the
TV.
ship, the
Try it free.
robot, and a place to stay all rent-free? We do have some funds we can disperse from time to time.
Oh!
Not to mention
Oh no!
get you a proper
What is
suit.
going on with the game?
We're
What am I?
explorers.
Hey, Dad.
We
Oh,
keep
look
a
at
lot of
Phil's gonna
equipment
get
on
another
hand
little
for
thing here, I
us.
think.
So the
Can
more
we
you
play
work with
that?
us,
Y'all check it out
the
with
more
Dad.
we
We
can
beat
share what we
still.
have.
Hers is not as tricky as
We'll need to head to
my
Mast.
Marco.
Check in with the Vanguard
That
recruiting
style
officer,
horror
my
game. I hear
contact
it's
works.
easier on casual player
And
like
listen,
you. Nina.
whatever you were before, or
Let's
whatever
take
you
it
do
out. I
once
think
you're
I
out
played
there, I
that.
don't care. So long as you don't bring UC
Oh
security
man,
to
that
our
was a
doorstep.
good one, bro.
Every member of Constellation is their
Oh
own
no.
conscience.
Hey,
Understood?
Chilla. Chilla, what is it? Chilla, yeah,
Let's
Chilla.
take a little
You
stroll
killed
through
this
New
one, bro.
Atlantis, shall we?
This was a good game, bro. So, we gonna end it right here, man. If y'all feeling it, make sure y'all hit that thumbs up share for your boy. But I'm out here. Alright, holla.
That was a good start to the game, man.